good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm Sarah Williamson. I work at Huddersfield University. I train teachers for the lifelong learning sector. That's my sort of main part of my work. And I do a lot of work working with Canadian academics, very feminist work, working in art galleries and museums, and looking at them as arenas and spaces to educate people for social justice. So that's what a lot of my own research is about at the moment. So I'll be talking to you about that in a minute.
Okay, so off you go. If you want to share your screen, take control.
Hopefully this is all looking okay.
Yes, it's looking good. If you could just put it on.
I know. I'm just trying to get it to do it. It never works when you want it to, does it?
It does. It's very stressful, all this online stuff.
Right.
Okie doke.
That's going to work. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm just going to say, try and get my presentation onto a large view if you can. Don't be looking at all the everyone. Have it as large as you can because it's all photographs, and hopefully it's a visual treat for you on a dark up here, very windy where I live in the Pennines, Halifax evening. So yes, this is what I'm going to talk to you about: critical and creative pedagogy, research and dissemination of that as well. And the real focus of this is about the potential of the arts to educate for social justice and for a better world. And so this is what I'm going to talk about, a bit like Clive, talking about the power of the arts in education. And I'm very interested in how we can use art to activate critical awareness and consciousness, and to look at using the arts as critical pedagogy so that it can become a practice of possibility and hope. And we live in such difficult times at the moment that I think we need to always be trying, looking forward to hope, don't we? We need to work and live with hope. You'll see a certain person on the left there. She's. I'm going to be talking to you about art activist Barbie, a character that I've created. And I situate this work as autographic inquiry. And this is a term that was put together by Rita Irwin. And it's where you have the three roles of being an artist, a researcher, and a teacher all work together. So I have an arts background, even though I don't teach art teachers, I just teach generically at the moment. But I'm also a researcher and I'm a teacher. So that's where the ART comes from. And then I've got two quotes here from Elliot Eisner and Maxine Green, and Clive, you had Eisner as well, didn't you? And these are two people who have inspired me for such a long time and continue to do so. Every time I go into their work, I find something. And I really love Maxine Green's idea of using the arts to help people become wide awake to the world and helping people have a new perspective on the lived world. And why art? Why use the arts? So this is in a similar vein about art asks us to think differently, see differently, hear differently, but ultimately to act differently as well. And why art galleries and museums? This is actually, oops, I just can't see the bottom of my screen where there's a little, that's where the quotation is, never mind.
I'll read it for you. It says, gender equality in culture is not immune to the inequalities and discrimination that permeate other areas of society, but culture can play an important role as both an enabler and driver of, and then I can't see the last bit.
Anyway, it's from UNESCO, everybody, 2014, UNESCO. So what we'd call a credible reference and source. This photograph's in Manchester Art Gallery. And I took this in one corner. You'll see a little person just perched below the statue. She was pointing out about how in one corner that there are 4 nudes. 2 of them are quite problematic, actually. The one on the right and the one on the left is of a terrified young girl. And why art galleries and museums? And art galleries and museums, particularly public ones, they are these amazing buildings with great big porticos and flights of steps. We're sort of in awe of them, and we go into them and we trust them as influential and authoritative places. But there are quite a lot of issues of exclusion and representation that we don't necessarily realise. For example, to do with how gender is represented, both male and female. And so I've started to do activist work with using Barbie dolls, really, where I go in and I create disruption, and I interrupt and I comment and I ask questions. And I've just got a quote here from Manicum and Walters, who, as I like to think, I'm answering their call for people to use inventive pedagogical practices, have the possibility to open up possibility for engagement and pedagogies of possibility. I really like that. And I'd been using, where did all this come from? I'd been using the arts and working in art galleries and museums with my own trainee teachers, and doing things like this, asking them to go around an art gallery, how many of the paintings are by women, how many by men, and they'd be absolutely, having a fit saying, well, this is Huddersfield Art Gallery, that there are 4 paintings by women and there are, over 100 by men. And then I'd say, and when you do see women in the gallery, you'll find them in the artworks, but how are they represented compared to men? And if you know the Guerrilla Girls work, you'll know that generally most women, when they're portrayed in art, tend to be nude. And why Barbie? I suppose she's the most famous doll in Western culture, isn't she? And we can have a love and hate relationship with her. And I'm quite interested in the idea of turning something on its head and subverting it. I suppose I'm quite mischievous as well. And so does Barbie have to be an instrument of female oppression, or actually can I work with her differently? And so I've created this character, our activist Barbie, who is a provocateur, I suppose. She's a feminist activist and she goes out and about challenging. She's subversive and disruptive, and it's playful pedagogic practice. Clive was talking about play, wasn't he? And a Twitter account I've set up to show this work, because I was doing it in galleries and doing it with my students as well. And I took some photographs, and the photographs, everyone just loved looking at the photographs. So I then set up a Twitter account. And this Twitter account will have been going just nearly for 2 years. And you'll see I've got over 15,000 followers at the moment, from all over the world as well. So it's been really international and a global project too. And back to Maxine Green, I'm taking action to repair what is felt to be missing or known to be wrong in the world. And this particular artwork is in the Guildhall Art Gallery in the City of London, and it was produced by a couple, a man and a woman, husband and wife, but it was only ever sold and exhibited under the man's name. So she was, I often get Barbie behind that little rope and pointing things out. I don't know if you can see that. For some reason, I think the slides just seem to be cutting off at the bottom, but there's a very famous Impressionist painting here that you might be familiar with. So I thought, well, will people look at it differently if I reenact that? So you'll notice that Barbie here has got a couple of colleagues. So she has Action Man and she has Ken, who work with her as well. And then I thought, well, we'll just turn the table, see how you like it then. What does it look like then? And I'll point out where things really just seem to have been painted for the male gaze. Is this really what we just call Victorian pornography? Are we just legitimizing that kind of painting by saying, oh, well, it's all based on mythology and classical history, and look at the fine quality of the painting, etc., etc. I often do echoes of work. And if you have a look at this coat, this little coat that she's wearing there was made by my mother for me when I was growing up. And often Barbie wears this vintage wardrobe of things created by my mother. She is at the Bonnard exhibition in London over a year ago. Refused to be the muse. You'll find a lot of women portrayed, languorously reclining, bathing. And so I was joking here that, the male gaze likes to have women not only beautiful and silent, but there's a lot of paintings of women sleeping. This is in the Ashmolean Museum. Again, in one gallery, I was looking at, on the one hand, one wall of things all about purity of women, and then another one where actually there was one painting women were portrayed in one painting as both vice and virtue. Here's a close-up of what she was saying there. And of course, gender and issues around gender intersects with race as well. So I do things about race. Often where you see women of colour portrayed in art, it's as some like exotic other. We've had the Black Lives Matter this year, and so I did some tweets about that, things that I thought were problematic at the Tate, where there were slaves portrayed in paintings alongside people in positions of power who were white. Also, we've seen through the pandemic, there's been a huge escalation in our first lockdown, wasn't there, about violence against women. So I did quite a lot of tweets about that. Again, you'll find in art galleries a lot of work where women, like this woman, you know, is being tortured. I'd taken 2 Barbies down to the National Gallery. They were so upset at looking at all these paintings of women being judged and threatened and raped that we just had to do some yoga. It was the only way to cope. And actually, just because it's by Rubens, does that make it okay because it's a rape scene, even though it's by Rubens? And what's the visitor reaction? So I've just got a few photographs to show you here. Often people spend more time looking at Barbie on the floor than these, you know, amazingly famous paintings. You are. So she certainly captures attention, and that's what I like, because a lot of people might not engage with gender issues and gender politics normally. You know, if I say, do we have a really serious discussion about this, people might say thanks, but no thanks, not now. Or people that do want to are the people that already sign up to it. So I'm trying to engage people who wouldn't normally see things in this way. As I've said before, she's a couple of colleagues, Action Man and Ken, and there's also Ken's cousin Ken as well. They often have a bit of a book club going and some reading to do. She has an information desk, an education desk. She has a news desk. Sometimes it's way past her bedtime, so you might find her in a dressing gown and rollers. So here she was tweeting when we're all staying at home and working from home that actually in art galleries you'll find endless paintings of women in their nightgowns and dressing gowns. Particular favourite of the male gaze. And again, I looked at how women are portrayed, often in, you know, looking at them in positions of lockdown in a way. They are sort of trapped in domestic settings, that idea of the gilded cage. And then statues, that's been a real big thing, hasn't it, this year? So I've done a lot of tweets about statues. Obviously, I've not been able to go into art galleries since March, but I often look at statues as, and we have a male fantasy monument alert. If you're familiar with, if you come out of Leeds Station, you'll know that there are, in the square outside, there are 4 great men of Leeds, you know, surrounded by 8 women wearing not very much. This is in Leeds Art Gallery, just pointing out what you see. You might have read all the press about the Mary Wollstonecraft sculpture by Maggie Hambling that was unveiled in London last week. So again, our activist Barbie tweeted about that. You know, how many great men would be commemorated in the nude? But answers will fit on a stamp. And how do I research the impact of this? Well, I look at it, I'm exploring it as critical pedagogy, also as public pedagogy, because I'm not just doing this with my own students, which I do, but I feel I'm educating the public as well, or our activist Barbie is. And I look at Henry Giraud's work about public intellectualism, the idea of speaking through a third party. Sam was talking about the idea of Sam, you know, this toy. Well, in a way, this is a bit like ventriloquism, speaking through a third party, isn't it? And culture jamming and feminist cyber activism too. In terms of theorising it, I'm interested in transformative learning theory, that idea of where, I suppose I take people into a liminal space, as Clive was saying, saying where things might not just quite fit with the perspective and the values that you might have had before, or you might not have seen art and see how women in particular are portrayed and how maybe they're excluded as female artists. And the dissemination of it, actually the social media account and Twitter has been amazing in terms of reach. I've been featured in lots of the national newspapers, interviewed on the radio, various things like that. So the Twitter account, for example, when I've written about art activist Barbie in a book that's just come out, I was able to say, oh, look what's just been published. Here's an example of something from the press. Let's disrupt the... I'm just showing you this because I just love the idea of una Barbie activista de arte. This was an interview for an Argentinian news agency. And in terms of the reach on social media, this has been the most successful month. This was April in this year. And if you just look on the right-hand side, the tweet impressions, I mean, I had to look twice when I saw this. I thought, is that million? And it is 1.86 million impressions. And the little, just looking at the Twitter account, that month had nearly 80,000 people look. And if you're wondering what the most popular tweet of all time has been so far, it was this one really. This is a painting in the Ashmolean Museum. And this nearly 50,000 people engaged with this one tweet. So thank you. I've taken you on a bit of a visual tour of this work using art activist Barbie. I've just got a tweet here where I after the great John Lewis, the American, had died, and I really loved what he'd talk about, making a noise and getting in good trouble. So AAB will continue to carry on getting in good trouble. And I'd just like to say thank you, because it has been a pleasure to talk about this work, in particular the power of the arts and activism to activate critical awareness, consciousness and change. And encourage you all to use pedagogies of uncertainty, which disrupt, unsettle, challenge, which are ambiguous. And here we are, look, troublesome. That's one of the words of the evening, isn't it? Troublesome.
It certainly is. Yeah, it's one that that stuck with me throughout my career, and you know what? I don't mind. I quite like being troublesome. I quite like questioning, challenging authority, and working out of structures. But yes,
just got two more slides. This was at Tim Walker exhibition at the V&A in March, the last exhibition I went to. And there was this little thing I saw, if you see it to the right, allegedly from C.S. Lewis, saying you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So wherever you are as educators, you can start from now to be troublesome. And I'm just going to show you a little bit just behind the scenes, just to make you all smile now, finally. So here we are. She was talking about, men in art, in paintings, they're oh so heroic, etc. And how did I take that photograph? This is with my daughter's Barbie horse, actually. And here you are. This was my good colleague and friend Judith, who had gone with me that day. And I said, Judith, could you sit on the floor, up a bit, left a bit, higher a bit? And so there you are. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm now going to stop screen sharing.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. I was chortling away through that. I don't know about the rest of you. I absolutely love it. So yeah, thank you so much. Love it, absolutely love it. Love Barbie. So Dan, can you, there was lots and lots of questions. Dan, do you want to, I think one that I saw was, you've got your Barbie Twitter account. Someone's put, is it on Instagram as well?
Well, interestingly, I did put 5 posts on Instagram and it got shut down. Oh. Now they're very strict to Instagram. Now, either they really don't like feminists, or they don't like the idea of anybody mentioning anything to do with nudity.
But you didn't on Twitter. Interesting. Dan, yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah, we've got one here. It says, were the Barbies left in the museums? Was there any possibility to offer a discussion, like space for comments on vision of the impact and what the messages were towards the public?
Yes, I leave them in situ for a short while. What I find is that I tend to get moved on by security. The one time I asked permission was at the National Gallery. Now, when I actually was going to put 3 dolls on the floor in front of that painting I showed you at the beginning, and I've got more. I'm a lot braver now. I'm a brave person now, and I go out and do it. And I just think I'm just going to do it. At first, I was really quite anxious. I'd be breaking out in a sweat, and I'd be like in an absolute state, thinking I can't do this, because it does take quite a lot of nerve. Anyway, when I thought, oh, I need, Barbie, Action Man and Ken, I thought, I don't think I can get 3 out here. I just can't do this. I'm going to ask permission. So I trotted along and I asked, and then I got taken to security, and then I got taken to another security, and then I got taken to the deputy head of security. And at the end of it all, they said, no, you'll have to ask the education. And then the head of security said, well, I don't really understand what you're doing. And I said, well, could I show you? She went, oh, no, not placards. Anyway, so after that, I've never actually asked permission. So I put Barbies on the floor. She has an easel, or I hold her up and take a photograph, and until I get moved on. And actually, often I get moved on because there'll be a crowd of people all around, and I find that strangers start to talk to each other. There'll be people having a conversation about what I'm pointing out, and they're people that are just starting to talk about gender and issues, but they don't necessarily know each other. So it does generate quite a lot of interest actually in galleries themselves. So as well as being on Twitter, I think the work in the galleries and the museums is important too.
Someone's asked, how do you involve your students?
How do I involve my students? Well, the students were involved right from the very beginning, because they did a pilot with me. I had this idea about, instead of post-it notes, wouldn't it amuse me no end if I gave everybody a Barbie and then Barbie had something to say. So I do have about 30 Barbies. And so I did a pilot with my students. This is how the Twitter account came about, because we did the work there, and it was really good. It was really successful, and I took some photographs, and then when I'd come back and I'd stuck the photographs on my office wall, everybody just wanted to look at the photographs. It didn't matter who it was. So yes, and I've continued to work with students and do workshops with students. I'm talking about engineers, math students. I take them into the art gallery, and I have a list of questions where I'm asking them to look and analyse about what they are seeing, and then I ask them to comment through using a Barbie. So that's how I use my students.
Yeah, so you can do it with any subject, really. One more question, Dan, have we got?
I think we've got a lot of straight positive feedback, really. I don't think there's any formal questions as such. There's a little bit of debate around use of the male forms such as Hercules and David, such as other Greek gods, etc. in the art world. But other than that, it seems to be quite positive.
That's brilliant. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for coming on and supporting our first Centre of Pedagogy event this evening. And I'm not going to lie, I was slightly dripping with sweat at the beginning, so thank you. And I wanted to thank Dan and all our wonderful guest speakers who've participated. And Dan's put a link in the chat, so if you could take a minute to give us some feedback. As you know, as educators, feedback is really important, so we know what you've enjoyed. I'd also be really interested in other things, themes, things that you, the practitioners out there, would like to know or to have particular presentations on, or themes, or even if you'd like to do one yourself. I would positively encourage it, whether you want to do 5 minutes, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but please, please, please share your research, share your thoughts with us. And I think my parting message for this evening is, I'm going to take some of the words that I've heard this evening, is be troublesome. Go into, what do we call, liminal spaces, Clive, am I right? Mm. And what was the knowledge, the troublesome knowledge? Yeah, so bear with that troublesome knowledge that Clive talked about, maybe going into uncomfortable spaces, and try out storyboards. Try out storytelling.
Sarah, can I just come in? It's Jill War. Hello, everybody. I'm Dean of Faculty. I have to say, the fact that Sarah's saying that she's going to be troublesome is slightly worrying to me in my role. However, just to say, just say huge thank you to our guests this evening. But I think also Sarah can't thank herself. Just a huge thank you to Dan, who has organised all of the administration behind the event. At one point this evening, we had 210 participants. It has dropped a little bit, but it's kind of getting later on into the evening. So, but we've had great attendance at the event. So huge thank you to our guests, and of course a huge thank you to Sarah for setting this up and organising, and of course for comparing through the event. So huge thank you to Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And it's lovely to see all our old mentors and assessors and staff. So please come again, spread the word, fill in the survey, contact us, email us. Please have a safe journey in the rest of the week.